G'day folks, welcome back to Thommo's Tin Shed. Very busy this one. You're going to want to put this in here, the 215 in. Remember we did the sub block in the last episode, we had it ready to go. It is all in and all mounts are done. You're going to watch me how I fabricated and put all the mounts in. There's a few little tech tips on the way. And also the subfloor. This is what the whole body structure is going to be welded on and fabricated around. So the next episode, this will be all important, but I'll show you how we got this on the platform today. So in the meantime, don't forget, if you like what we're doing here, hit like, subscribe, hit those notifications, and we're going to get into it. So let's kick off, get Thommo's Tin Shed underway. G'day folks, I'm Thommo. Hey, you're there, I'm here, I'm doing stuff, you're watching, perfect. Another beautiful day here in Perth, Western Australia, and we're back on the Jack Nelson Ballot. Today's going to be a pretty busy day today. We're going to be dropping the setup block into the chassis. Now, if you're new to the channel, or you didn't catch last episode, we're putting a 1935 6-cylinder Chev motor into a 1928 4-cylinder chassis. So the mounts are not relative to each other. So we have to work out and calculate where that motor is going to sit in relation to the car, and that is based off the radiator, because the radiator is not going anywhere. It's in the standard position. Now, I've worked out where that datum point is. I also worked out that Chevrolet like a 3-inch gap between the fan blade and the radiator to be the most efficient draw on the radiator, so I figure if it's good enough for Chevrolet, it's good enough for me. We also had to calculate the distance between the front of the fan blade to the cylinder block, and we know what the length of the cylinder block and the bell housing is. So I'm going to show you with a handheld where all those marks are and what they represent. But we are going to be doing the fabrication of the mounts for this engine and transmission assembly, and once we've done that we can start in on the subfloor, which is going to be the basis for the body build. We're going to really push along with the fabrication of the main body frame over the next couple of episodes, because you really want to sort of consolidate its shape, but more importantly where things have to fit in on around fuel tanks and wiring steering boxes, steering wheels, where that sort of stuff. So it's kind of important that we get the body up and running pretty quickly. So we're going to concentrate on getting this motor in today and starting on the subfloor. The subfloor is going to be the carrying platform for the body. So we'll see how we go for time. We'll just keep pushing on anyway. And who'd have thought at the age of 57 folks that my math teacher in high school, who insisted that someday I would need to know fractions, trigonometry and a bit of algebra. Now I convinced him that I was going to be a mechanic and I didn't need any of that. I just needed my hands to do the tool work. As it turns out, I need trigonometry, a bit of Pythagoras theorem to work out how to square a chassis. Every spanner I pick up to work on an early American car is in fractions of an inch. And it turns out I didn't have all the information to set up this block. I had certain measurements that I needed. So I needed to reverse engineer and transpose some of those information to get all the parts I needed. So when you know it, algebra saves the day. So we're going to get in. I'm going to get a handheld to show you all the marks on the chassis, show you what they all represent, and then I'm going to push the chassis over to the lifting bay. We're going to just do time lapse on that one so you can see the motor going in, and then we'll get the chassis back into the fab bay and start making the brackets. We're going to custom fabricate all of the brackets to mount this, and that's our main goal today, is to get that done. When we get that done, then we can start looking at the subfloor from there, because we'll know where the bell housing finishes, so we know where the firewall will begin, kind of thing. There you go, more algebra. So let's stop talking and let's get some work done. Okay, so this is the radiator cowl, as I said. We're going to custom make a new body for it, but the radiator will always sit in the same position. So the back of the radiator core sits here. We want fan clearance between the back of the radiator core to the front of the cooling fan of 3 inches. That's what Chevrolet recommend. We know from the front edge of the fan blade to the block face, it is 5 inches. We cruise all the way down here to the back of the block, which is at 27.5 inches, and then a further 7 inches to the back face of the gearbox. So that's where the motor's going to go. I may have to take these original brackets out, but we'll see how we go, because there's going to be a mount here, so we may even get away with using those. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, I'm just going to make up 2 quick brackets so we can float the motor in there, and then we'll get it to the lift bay and get it in. So she's roughly set in place right now, folks. We have the 2" by 2" angle line holding the gearbox in place, well, the gearbox bell housing. So just go back to what we know, bit of RHS holding the front pulley up there. So we have our radiator, our fan clearance, distance from the fan to the block, which is now here, 27.5 inches back down to here. We have the block to bell housing face, another 7 inches, and we have our gearbox face. Now the 3-speed gearbox is going to go through that, and it's probably going to need to shorten up the drive line. That'll be something we'll have to do later. But for now, we got the pedals in place, so that means we can now do the subframe for the floor, and have the floor pans in place, and start working out where my pedal and my steering are going to go. And then we also have a look here. These existing 4-cylinder brackets are pretty close to our mount brackets here. So it looks like we might be able to create a short bracket in between those and utilise the existing plate, which would be nice. But we still need to use those captive press plates and a static cross member to go across there. But it looks like it's going to be fairly straightforward. Just a slight bend and a bit of tube, and we're going to mount the blocks through here. So that's what's up next. Let's rock and roll. So as you can see, folks, we've got 2 factory bolts, 7/16 UNC bolts that are part of that. Now that's the same on both sides, and this block is now currently centered along the string line. So what I need to do is I need to make this engine mount here sit down in between here, and as you can see, it's looking pretty good. So I need to make a bracket that bolts off here, that secures that in there, and then we make an intermediate bracket that takes us from the bell housing to the top of the bush. So let's start in the chassis bracket first, and then we'll do the engine brackets. So as you can see, folks, I've actually made a base plate out of 1/4 inch mild steel plate. That's 4 by 3, and I put 2 3/8 bolts across the diagonals. I did fabricate this bracket. For some reason the GoPro, while I was doing it, didn't film it, so I'm sorry you didn't get to that, but it's just, again, it's just mild steel 1/4 inch plate, and I've made it to take the engine mount, and it's going to tack on like that. Okay, so we've quickly welded these up. That's all right. And this is how it all fits together, folks. So this is the second part. What we need to do is we make an intermediate bracket that takes from the 2 existing bell housing bolts, which are both 7/16 UNC bolts, about 1.5 inches apart, to these 2 inch apart 1/2 inch. So we're just going to make an angle bracket, literally a bracket that's going to bolt between those two, and I'll probably just put a little corner brace through there just to sort of stop them from flexing. So we'll make the plate to fit this engine mount here, and then we'll use a bit of template material and we'll make a nice little angle bracket that goes between there. So let's just get this plate first. So what we need to do is to make a template that picks up this angle that takes us over those bolt holes there. So we're just going to trim that down a bit. More. Now I just want to cover that a bit, so I'm going to put a slight angle on the back. You can just freehand this, guys. You don't need to sit there with a ruler and a pen. You need to freehand it so you can get those couple of bolts where you want them. And of course, you've heard the old dirty finger routine, which is going to find those bolt holes, which are going to be about here somewhere. Here, so what we've got, I don't know where you can see that, but we've marked the imprint of the bolt hole, so we can use a wad punch and punch them out. We've trimmed the angle here to suit the angle of the plate, and then that is going to go through that. Now what we need to do now is just dress it up a little bit. Needs a trim on the bottom. Take a 1/4 inch off of that. Basically got a 1/4 inch overhang on the bottom of the plate. That goes similar like that. Pretty good. A little bit more off that. Take another 3/16 off of that. It picks up through there. Looking pretty good. And what we do, we just run a rough parallel line about 1/2 inch past that, and it'll still a nice radius. What we end up is back here, a plate that picks up those 2 holes. So we go from template to finished product. Now what we have to do is weld that all the way around, and I might put a small gusset maybe just in the back corner here, just to stop it from sort of flexing. But that's one side done. Once we get that in place, we'll tack that up, pull it out, weld it up, cut the trim off the back. There's a little bit extra on the back, I just let it go through, and then that bracket is done when we start looking at the front. I'm getting there, folks. Right, we're up to the front mounts now. So what I've done is I've made a little press section which fits inside the chassis rail. Looks like this in its raw form. It's just a piece of 3/16 mild steel flat sheet. I've put 2 captive nuts in place. So we've got mount location, and I've put a double pressing so it slips inside the chassis rail, as you can see. A little trick of the trade you need to know. This is a little tech tip if you're doing any press work. Now I just use a shop press. I'll show you what I've got, my setup in a minute. I'll actually go through it. We'll show you how we press these up in the shop. But when you press any material, especially as it starts getting into some thickness, like a light bit of sheet doesn't move very much, but as soon as you get any thickness, the press line that you press the machine on is always the inside of your pressing, and that means that as it presses, this material gets carried around. So every time you put a 90-degree bend, you actually gain, generally speaking, the thickness of the material. Now in this one here, I wanted to put a factory style radius. I've actually made the radius softer. I want it to sort of match what's already there. So I know this is going to gain more straight up, I already know it. So before this piece was bent, it was just a flat sheet, and I've bent this 90 here. So on my 2-inch line, I've marked 2 inches down. Then I marked another line 1 inch further along. This is just a reference line. It means nothing other than referencing what we're about to do. So I press this at 90 degrees. When you roll this over, that reference line continues on over. What you do is you measure from your reference line to the outside of the material, and what that does will tell you how much you've gained. In this case, for 1 inch stating point, we've actually gained a 1/4 inch. So that's a pretty significant gain. Which means that when we set our lines for pressing, we have to account for the gain of the material, which is, we know it's 1/4 inch on each bend. So I wanted a 4 1/4 inch outside press. I know that these are gaining a 1/4 inch and they're 90 degrees, so I have to reduce that by 1/2 inch. So for my 4 1/4 outside, my inside press lines have to be 3 3/4 inch. If I do that, compensating for the gain in the press, that should give you exactly what you see here. Now we've got this tacked in at the moment, so that's okay. And then one on both sides, as you can see, we come over this way. That's the other side of the chassis. It's tacked in, and it's also got its mount plate in place, which is one of these. So that's just a bit of 1.5" by 1/4 flat bar, and I've cut them to 4 inches long with 3-inch hole center, and that picks up those 2 captive bolts in there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put this plate back on, and then I'll show you how the tube fits in. So that's what would be the right-hand chassis mount. Well, that doesn't look tacked there, it's actually tacked up on top. So that's the mount plate, which is the 4-inch mount plate. And we come back around to the other side here, you can see the motor's just held up with a bit of RHS at the moment. And there's the other mount, so that facing mount there. Now, if you look up here, we can get some light on this. We have 2 engine mount blocks there which pick up the original bracket on the motor. And then we've got a piece of 1/4 by 3-inch flat bar. I think I've cut to 5 or 6 inches, something like that. And it basically just got a sandwich block between the engine and this mount. And to support all that from left to right, we've got this piece of tube. So it's going to go up in there, it's going to go there. So from the left hand chassis rail all the way through, picks up that mount through there, and up to the other side is with this bit of tube. That's what's going to hold the front of the motor up. It's only a race car, we don't want to put too much weight back into it, so we're going to keep it light, keep it simple, but nice and strong. So we're going to tack that up now, and then we'll get it out and weld her up.
G'day folks, good morning. In a not so sunny Western Australia, we got a bit of rain here today, but we're still in the shed, and today we're going to finish off and get the subfloor for this floor frame done. And that should wrap up this episode. And the next episode we're going to have to be doing a little bit of bodywork. But for now, I've taken the liberty of already marking where the floor sections goes, and I know that because I've done this little bit of scaling on this original picture. So that is Jack Nelson's Ballot being unloaded in Kalgoorlie off the train. Smart man, rather than drive it up, he used to train it up. But I used this simple format and formula to determine where my firewall starts and where my rear firewall finishes. So I know where the floor section is. It's not actually a lot, it's going to be pretty tight in there. But I'll show you that process on the next episode, because we're going to have to use the same process to design and develop and get the proportions of the body right. Simple little bit of geometry, but works a treat. And I'll show you the tip on the next one. But for now, we just need to get on with this. I know where I need to start it, I know where I need to finish it. I just want to get this framework in, so that when we hit the next episode, we hit the ground running, we start doing tin work on the floor, we start putting rod frame to get the body up. So I'm going to finish this coffee and get into it. Just to show you what we're talking about here, we've got the bonnet, which will flush up with that edge there. We come down here, 40 inches later, we have the bonnet where it finishes. That means that's where my firewall starts. A further 12 inches or 1 foot is where the dash panel is going to be, up here somewhere. And then we go all the way from the firewall to the rear firewall, which is 4 foot. That's where the back of the floor pan finishes and the front of the floor pan starts, and everything in between will be floor.
So here's another tech tip, guys. This is something that I just discovered, but it's pretty cool. This is a shout out to my mate Shelley, one of our subscribers.
He's always chasing tech tips, and here's one for you, Shell. I wanted somewhere between 5/16 and 3/8 inch clearance between the chassis and the body, because I didn't want it creaking. Quite a lot of guys just sort of attach the bodywork straight to the chassis, but when the chassis flexes through suspension travel, you get creaking and moving, and it starts bending panels and popping rivets. It's not okay. So what I've done is I've put this clearance through here so that when I'm bouncing around Percolilly doing 90 mile an hour, my skins won't be rattling and won't be trying to pop off the machine. But to get that happening, I discovered these little pop magnets that I have in my stock are about 5/16 of an inch. So what I've done is I've set up just a temporary tag, and we go down here 40 inches later, a second temporary tag, and I've had to pie cut this rail section through here to clear the radius. As you can see, there's a bit of a radius there, a little bit of pie cut there, but that gets me my 4-foot framework. And I've done the other side exactly the same. But the beauty about the magnets is you can set it up, you can level it, and the magnets hold everything in place. You can level the other side through, and now you can start putting the formwork in, and they don't move. Now I still have to do the actual mounts which are going to go on here, but that can happen whenever. For now though, I can get the main substrate floor while these are hanging on the pot magnets. There you go, tech tip pot magnets, keep everything square while you get your formwork done. Not bad. That's for you, Shelley.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode, guys. We've got the subfloor all finished in place. There was some of that I didn't show. It's just welding tube, you know, there's no big brainstorm on that. What's really important, what happens next episode. This subframe is going to be the basis for the body frame, and then we're going to create the shape of the car using rod, flat bar, and we're also going to be doing tin work on the floor pans. We're sending floor pans in place so I can do the seats, the pedals, and so on and so forth. So we've got a fair bit done on this one, and I'm pretty happy. We've got the motor sitting in there now, subs are done, we're ready for the next episode. So thanks for kicking around, thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you like what we're doing here, hit like, subscribe, hit those notifications, and we'll see you on another episode of Thommo's Tin Shed real soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay cool. We'll catch you around.